Hey friends, welcome to my channel. I'm Morgan. If you're new, then welcome. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Today we're going to be talking about a case that's been on my mind for months. It's a very disturbing case, but I also find it very interesting. It's about a woman named Mitchelle Blair. Mitchelle Blair was born May 10th, 1979. She lived in the Martin Luther King Apartments in Detroit, Michigan, and she had 4 children. The children didn't really have a pleasant upbringing in the home. It was a very toxic household, so they didn't get a lot of peace because their mother and the fathers, because the children had different fathers, but the mother and the fathers would argue constantly, so the kids didn't really have the most pleasant household experience growing up. Mitchelle Blair, the mother, was known to be a good, kind-hearted person with a nice personality, a calm and composed personality, but inside, she would always lash out at her children and take her anger out on them due to her arguments with their fathers. Blair had 4 children. Her oldest was Gabby. Her next daughter was Stony. And then she had a son whose name was Stephen. And another son, her youngest, whose name was Matthew. The first incident that should be discussed about this case is trigger warning. It has to do with sexual abuse. So just want to put that disclaimer out there. The first incident happened in August of 2012 when Mitchelle Blair came home and saw her youngest son Matthew, who was 5 years old, trying to stimulate himself with a toy doll. Now, Mitchelle Blair was infuriated by the sight of this and questioned her son about why he was doing what he was doing. And the son said that his older brother, Stephen, had been sexually abusing him in this manner for a while now. Of course, this infuriated Mitchelle even more, and she went to question Stephen about what Matthew had told her. Stephen, the older son, had confessed to trying to hump on his younger brother, and this made his mother furious. Now, most parents, when they get infuriated by their children, they wouldn't react in this way, but Mitchelle Blair was a different kind of parent. She began to kick and beat and punch on her son, Stephen. She forced him to drink Windex. She even poured scalding hot water on his private parts. And then she proceeded to put a plastic bag over his head, causing him to lose consciousness. And then she strangled him to death. Now, of course, Blair didn't go to the police and tell them what happened. So instead, she decides to wrap him up in a trash bag and place him in a deep freezer that they have in their living room area next to the kitchen. This freezer would turn out to be where Stephen's body would be hidden for years before being discovered. Stephen was only 9 years old when his mother tragically took his own life from him. 9 months later, in May of 2013, Mitchelle Blair discovered that her daughter Stony had also been molesting her son Matthew, who was still 5 years old. This discovery enraged Mitchelle Blair, and she decided to starve her daughter Stony and then ultimately beat her to death in May of 2013. Stony was only 13 years old. Mitchelle Blair decided to do like she did with her son Stephen. She put Stony in a bag, wrapped her up, and put her lifeless body on top of Stephen's body in the deep freezer, where she would be hidden there for years before being discovered. Blair allegedly said that she wanted to turn herself in for killing her daughter Stony. However, she didn't, because her youngest son, Matthew, said that he did not want to live without his mother. So instead, that is why she decided to just hide the body, just like she did with her sons. 3 years later, in 2015, there was an eviction served to Mitchelle Blair due to her not paying rent. The 36th District Court went into her home to take out all of her furniture and belongings, and this is when they discovered the deep freezer that contained 2 dead bodies of children. After the discovery of the bodies, it was determined that Stephen, 9 years old, was deceased due to blunt force trauma and thermal injuries, whereas Stoney, 13 years old, died due to blunt force trauma to the head. Mitchelle Blair confessed to the killings, stating that her 2 children were demons and that she would do it again if she had to. Blair was quoted as saying, "I don't care what anybody thinks. She had to go, period. When I say he's got closure, he's got it. I know exactly what he was feeling. I know exactly what he was feeling because that's exactly how I used to feel." Mitchelle Blair was then arrested and charged with murder on March 24th, 2015. Now, the trial for this case was a roller coaster. It was very much giving circus. While the children's fathers were seeking parental rights over the surviving 2 children, they too were also accused of playing a part in the children's deaths. State Attorney Kelly McGasey thought that Alexander Dorsey and Stephen Barry should feel guilty for the part that they played in the children's deaths. She feels like they should feel culpable for having their children knowingly live in a home where they know that they have their sister and brother dead in a freezer in their living room. The reason she felt this way is because I would imagine they had to have known that something was going on, because 2 out of the 4 children were not there. And although the fathers did not live with Mitchelle Blair, I believe they visited and had to have noticed that something was going on. And they did not do anything to help their 2 surviving children. But they wanted parental rights over the 2 surviving children now, after the fact of Mitchelle Blair being arrested and charged. I do have to say I completely understand where State Attorney McGasey is coming from, because while the 2 surviving children lived in a very toxic and unhealthy household, Alexander Dorsey and Stephen Barry were able to just live their lives normal without having to deal with any of the psychological problems that caused the children so much pain. So naturally, McGasey did not deem neither one of the fathers as fit to take care of the 2 surviving children. The father's attorneys described the relationship that the fathers had with the children and the relationship that they had with Mitchelle Blair. They discussed how, even though they did not live at home with the children, they had seen Mitchelle Blair abuse them a few times. There were incidents in 2002 and 2005 that the fathers had reported, but they were not investigated by the police. Although Mitchelle Blair is not the greatest mother, she did say that she didn't want neither of the fathers to take over parental rights of the 2 surviving children, as they were absent in their lives before these incidents occurred. On July 17, 2015, Mitchelle Blair was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison for first-degree murder. Due to 28 misconducts that she racked up by March 2017, Mitchelle Blair was also charged with an additional 38 months to 5 years in prison. Blair allegedly used to spit on and hit other prisoners. She would use cans to throw her urine and feces at police personnel, and she would beat on police personnel and assault them. So these misconducts earned her even more time in prison on top of her life sentence. Mitchelle Blair is currently serving her life sentence at the Huron Valley Correctional Facility in Pittsfield Township, Michigan. When Blair was convicted, the two surviving children, Gabby and Matthew, were put in the care of the maternal aunt and uncle. Due to living amongst their dead siblings, these two children had to undergo therapy. These children now were dealing with trauma from their childhood and what they experienced living in that household. The oldest daughter, Gabby, always feared that she would be next. She always tiptoed around Mitchelle Blair. She always was worried that she would make the wrong mistake or a wrong move and upset her mother to the point where she too would have the same fate as her other two siblings. Gabby internalized this as a trauma response, and she just knew that she had to take care of her youngest brother and protect him with everything in her. Gabby and her younger brother Matthew both have a very tight bond and a very strong relationship because of what they experienced in that household together. They basically only had each other, so this is why they have a very tight bond now as siblings. After this incident, Gabby graduated and attended college where she is pursuing a career as a veterinarian. I think this is because she has this instinct in her to naturally protect and take care of people, and her love for animals may have had something to do with that as well. But her and her brother have overcome the setbacks that they have experienced, and they are doing well. The little brother Matthew is still living with the maternal aunt and uncle, and they are just trying to move on and live life as normally as they can after all is considered. As for Matthew's father, he was unable to gain parental rights over Matthew because he didn't have a job or a place to live for Matthew, and he also didn't have a significant bond with Matthew, so he was not granted these parental rights. Gabby and Matthew remained at the house of their great aunt and uncle until Gabby turned 18 and was able to move out and attend college. And that is the story of Mitchelle Blair, aka the Freezer Mom. Thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on this case. Please subscribe and like so you can catch my next video, and thank you for coming. Bye.